Okay, good afternoon. I'm going to call the General Purposes Committee meeting to order. Councillor Au has put forward a motion, a resolution. All the councillors have copies of this, and it was on table. So it relates to recycling for textiles. So I'm going to suggest we put that as number 4 on the GP agenda. May I have a motion to that effect? All right, all those in favor, opposed, carried. So I'll take a motion on the minutes. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, any opposed? That's carried. So we start off the meeting today with a delegation from the General Manager of Stephenson Harbour Authority to talk about Stephenson Cannery Channel, and we'll turn it over to Jamie Gusto. So if you want to come forward, please have a seat over here. And as you know, you've got 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for having me today and giving me the time. So just a little bit of a background on Stephenson Harbour Authority. We're a nonprofit managing the largest commercial fishing harbour in Canada, home port to 500 vessels and 35 businesses that support the commercial fishing industry. In 2014, our board of directors made it our primary goal to make Stephenson the hub of BC's commercial fishing industry. And since then, we've made major strides. We've constructed a new ice plant, a net manufacturing facility, seafood packaging and distribution facility, and more recently, we completed construction of a building which now houses the only marine plastics recycler in BC. 50 million pounds of seafood is offloaded here annually. We also provide the public direct access to fresh, local seafood at our Fisherman's Wharf. As you all are aware, Stephenson Harbour is the #1 tourist destination for Richmond, attracting thousands of people each year, pumping millions of dollars into the local economy. Everything that we are working so hard to achieve in Stephenson is compromised by sediment infill in Cannery Channel. Certain sections of Cannery Channel are approaching critical levels of water depth and are now posing safety concerns for larger vessels trying to access the harbour. Larger vessels can no longer safely get into the harbour at lower tides and are forced to wait to enter. Fishers and boaters who are not familiar with Stephenson risk running aground. This is a disaster waiting to happen. Running aground could cause a vessel to capsize, the most drastic consequence being loss of life. Let's not forget what happened in 2004 when the tall ship Concordia ran aground in Cannery Channel. We were lucky that no one was injured at that time. Running aground also poses a major risk to our environment. The largest vessel currently accessing Stephenson Harbour holds 128,000 litres of fuel. Can you imagine what this would mean for our marine life and habitat if the fuel tank ruptured because there was not enough water for them to enter? Not only is this a safety and environmental concern, it also affects the local seafood economy because if these vessels can no longer enter the harbour, the seafood would have to be offloaded elsewhere, meaning local businesses and jobs here in Stephenson would be negatively impacted. So just to give you a few quick facts about dredging, maintenance dredging should be completed every 8 to 10 years. Between 2010 and 2019, 4 separate dredging campaigns were required to dredge the channel for a total cost of $2.8 million. Obtaining the necessary permits from Environment Canada and the province takes up to 2 years. So if we apply today, it'll likely be June 2024 before we're able to dredge. And by that time, it would have been 14 years since the entrance was dredged, 10 years since the western portion, 7 years since #1 road, and 5 years since the eastern portion was dredged. Unfortunately, the dredging costs have risen dramatically over the last few years. When we dredged the entrance #1 road and western portion, we were allowed to use the cheaper cutter suction method and dispose in river during the freshet. However, since our last campaign, Environment Canada no longer condones this and we were required to use the more expensive clamshell method and ocean dispose of the material. Higher fuel and labor costs and rigorous environmental monitoring requirements are also contributing to increased costs. So the cost to dredge the entire channel is estimated to be $5 million. I want to tell you a bit about what we're doing to raise funds on our end. In 2015, we implemented a 2 to 3% fee on most of our services to raise funds to put towards dredging the channel, not our water lots, just the channel. In addition to the funds raised by this fee, our board allocated an additional $330,000 this year alone into our dredging fund. Keep in mind, we are a nonprofit. we are the only small craft harbor in Canada that has ever earmarked funding for dredging. I'm also actively lobbying the province through Kelly Green's office for their share. And in regards to the federal funding piece, MP Parm Baines is working hard on his end to submit an application to the Infrastructure Ministry to secure funding. I am asking you here today to fund up to 1/3 of the cost to dredge the channel as you have all done in the past. This is estimated to be $1.67 million. If the federal government comes to the table, it would reduce everyone's share. Now, this is an issue we cannot afford to ignore any longer. It's critical infrastructure that needs to be regularly maintained, and neglecting it any further could have dire consequences. Thank you so much for your time.
I take it what you're suggesting is that, first of all, we need an initiative or a program to do it ASAP.
Yes.
To do it at one time and to get this done. But secondly, as I understand from what you said and others, there's a constant problem that there's no sense of responsibility by really any level to get this done. So we not only need to tackle it one time, but without slowing us down, we need a sustainable formula to carry us on to have a regular program so we don't have to go through this kind of an exercise every single time.
That's exactly right, Mayor
Fair
Brody.
to say. Okay, we've got some questions, and then I'm going to suggest that we would refer this matter to staff. So first of all, we'll go to Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Worship, and thank you very much for coming, Jamie. I appreciate it. Just a couple questions on it, and I'm going to refer to my previous life when I sat 15 years on the board with you. First of all, you mentioned in terms of getting a permit, it takes almost 2 years to get it done.
It does.
That's incredible.
It is
Absolutely
incredible.
incredible. We could flood the whole lower mainland and the whole Fraser River estuary on that. I mean, I think we should be doing something on that one, Your Worship, to be quite frank with you, and I think we should be applying right now. You also mentioned, and when I was on the board, we applied through the Fisheries Department, since we are fishing harbor still, and we're still on it, and we would get $200,000, $300,000 every year. I commend MP Baines with the Infrastructure Fund. But what's the Department of Fisheries doing and the Department of Small Craft Harbors doing? Where's their money?
So their responsibility is to just dredge the water lots under our head lease with them. They have nothing to do with the channel.
Interesting. Well, I would say through you, Your Worship, it's imperative that we do something with it. And I wish it had come long before the critical stage. Call this a crisis right now, and it's critical. We've got a freshet coming up. We've got things, and I guess maybe even some of our staff could answer this, and maybe not the answer now. But when you dredge, as far as I know, and what we've done at the harbor, you end up easing the pressure of water on your diking system, of which we've got a very good diking system, and not because you have a larger channel for the water to flow. Is that not correct in my ascertaining? Even though we've got strong riprap, we're not going to get flooded, but in the channel, it prevents flooding of Britannia. And you know what happened with Britannia a couple of years ago? It was under 2 or 3 feet of water.
We can ask our staff, if this matter gets referred, we'll ask our staff to
Yeah,
comment on that.
I'd like to answer that because I see twofold here. It also strengthens what we're already doing and on it, and it would help in terms of the infrastructure and all the way right out to literally Gary Point, to be quite frank with you. So I appreciate those answers. And your request is for about $1.5 million, 1.5 million. Okay.
Okay,
Okay. Thank you very much, and
Councillor-
keep up the good work.
Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. To that note, I actually did prepare a motion. I think we are in a critical situation here, and no one's going to argue that this needs to be done. It obviously needs to be done. But what I'm wondering is if we couldn't get the ball rolling, given that it takes 2 years to get the permits. And so the motion that I wanted to make was to refer staff to investigate the option of the city of Richmond committing $1.25 million towards dredging the
Do
Cannery
you have a
Channel.
question for her?
Yeah, okay, the question.
The question.
Okay, you want me to ask questions first and then, okay, whatever. Okay, so what I was gonna get to was that it wouldn't just be Richmond. It would be the Stephenson Harbour Authority, the federal government, and the province. What other jurisdictions are there, if any, or are those the four key stakeholders?
Those are the four key stakeholders in Cannery Channel anyways, yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Delta.
So you were stated in your letter.
Delta is also important. They have the same problem with the secondary channels.
They do. They have a much larger problem than us, so I believe they have 4 channels to deal with and we have 1.
So in your letter, you talk about 2009, the Port of Vancouver gave $500K, and then province $786K, and then Stephenson Harbour Authority put in $590K in 2014, and then in 2019, that the Port of Vancouver ended the local channel dredging fund just abruptly, and then you mentioned, of course, that it takes 2 years. So I'm just wondering do you think it would be helpful if, I think someone has to take the lead. Do you think it would be helpful if the city of Richmond said, okay, fine, we're in, we'll do our quarter, but we want the other quarter to come from the province, the feds, and from the Stephenson Harbour Authority? Would that help roll the ball along faster?
It would, but we need to commit 1/3. And the reason why we need to commit up to 1/3 is because to this day, the feds have not come up with the funding. And we can't just be stalled here. We have to take action, just like we did in the previous years. SHA came up with the federal part of the funding because they wouldn't come to the table. Now, MP Baines is working hard, and I do have more hope than I ever have that he will come through with funding, but I mean, there's no promises here. So rather than go back and make another motion for more money, it would be preferable to me if you just approved up to 1/3, and then.
I'm sure.
And do you think it would sort of light a fire under them if we?
Counselor, that's really for us to figure out, okay?
Well, I believe that the delegation knows more about the other parties than we do. But all right then, thank you.
Counselor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship, to the delegate. Just a couple short questions here. The first one in regards to what was mentioned earlier about federal government commitment to Steveston. So in August of 2021, Steveston received $17 million for the Small Craft Harbor federal government program. Is there any, I guess 2 questions for that. Is there any of that left? And I know it does say in their announcement or back then that it was for basin dredging. So could any of that funding, if it remains, be used for this?
Thank you for your question. So the $17 million is actually still ongoing funding. The majority of it is for infrastructure projects such as wharf replacements and fixing up buildings and things like that. There is a small portion for its annual maintenance dredging program within our water lots. So for example, that funding is for dredging A and B finger at the Gulf site this year, and that's the only funding for dredging allocated towards that. And those are the fingers by Padjo's Fish and Chips.
Thanks. The follow-up then on that one, I assume then we would have to ask the federal government if the remaining funds could be used for something different, like channel dredging. Would that?
There's no remaining funds. All 17 million are earmarked for projects already.
Okay, thanks. My next question then is in regards to in your submission to us, it mentions that the port had funding from the federal government called the Local Channel Dredging Program. Do we know if they're still getting that funding, or has that ended?
That has ended. And that's why we're in the position we are in today.
Great, thanks. And then, so my final question then is, should the port not be the 5th partner from your point?
We have approached the port. I mean, they have a mandate to maintain the shipping channels. That's their main mandate. It's not the secondary channels, I believe, for commerce. And that's why they stepped away from the secondary channels, like cannery channel and the domestic channels. We need their expertise to run these dredging projects, and we've asked them for that. MP Baines has approached them as well too regarding using them to administer the dredging contracts. So I hope that they'll come to the table in that aspect.
Okay, great. Yeah, I hope if there's a staff referral or a partnership going forward that they have a major role to play. If it's not a monetary value, it's, as you say, the expertise. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, through the chair. Well, thank you for the update, and I think everybody agrees that dredging of the channel is important. But I think the mayor touched on it. I think the important thing is an ongoing sustainable funding formula with various partners. So we're talking primarily kind of a one-time thing right now to deal with an emerging situation that's urgent. So you'd agree that that would be the priority going forward, though, is a sustainable funding formula with whatever partners can be enticed to be involved in it, correct?
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Because as nice as it is to see everybody, it's nerve-wracking also coming here.
Yeah, and just one other question then. Just if you could enlighten me a little bit as to the cost difference between the two forms of dredging that you referred to, the clam one that we have to do now and depositing in the ocean versus a more direct method of going to the river. Is there, I imagine that's a cost driver for making it a more expensive process as well. Is that the only driver that makes it more expensive?
Well, the cutter suction is just like a big vacuum. So
Right.
it can do a lot more very quickly. And disposing in river with the freshet meant that we didn't have to take barge loads of material out to Point Grey to dump. The clamshell method is just like a big claw that just takes the mud out and dumps it. So it takes like 3 times longer. So that was the added cost.
Yeah, so on the one hand, I intuitively think I understand why one would be more environmentally friendly, yet I don't completely understand why one would be, because either way, you're just scooping things out en masse, dumping it, or you're sucking it out and dumping it. So what's the rationale for that? I don't quite get it.
We've been trying to figure that out as well too with Environment Canada, and we've lobbied a lot to reverse that because of the cost difference to no avail.
Right.
They keep saying, you know, it's not good for the resident killer whales, and I mean, there's not much we can do.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Steves. Harold? Yeah, you're muted, Harold. You're muted. You're still muted. You're muted, Harold. There you go.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I don't have a question. I have 3 points to make as part of a referral
Okay.
when it's time.
Can you hold that thought?
I'll hold that.
We'll come
Yeah.
back to you. Councillor Rao.
I just want to ask, what is the justification of the federal government for not coming to the table and contribute money, given that this harbor is actually of national importance as the largest commercial harbor in Canada? So, I mean, what is this justification? There's no reason that they can do that.
So for the past many years, the responsibility has been downloaded from Public Works to Canada Coast Guard and then to Port Metro. And I think it's just bickering back and forth. Nobody wants to take responsibility. Sorry, I don't have a better answer.
What a pity.
Yes.
Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to the delegate. Well, thanks for coming forward, Ms. Gusto, and thank you for your presentation. Now, in regards to the application process, is there no fast track application available to you, given the urgency of the situation?
None that I'm aware of, but I'm going to press upon, once I secure funding, I'm going to press upon the urgency and the safety concerns to both Flinro and hopefully rely heavily on MP Baines and MLA Green to help me expedite those applications.
And I'm sure that, you know, if there's any letters of support that you need from the city of Richmond, we would be happy to do that as well. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
In terms of costs, first of all, we don't know exactly how many partners there's going to be. You have an idea. You think there's 3, but there could be more. With like Delta, they've been pressing on this for a number of months now. We don't know what our share is going to be. We don't know what the source of funding is going to be. And we don't know what the ultimate arrangement will be, plus the idea of a sustainable program. So my suggestion is we refer this to staff, first of all, to determine the potential costs and the likely share of the city of Richmond and the source of funding. Secondly, that we ask staff to work with the other partners to suggest a cost-sharing arrangement. And thirdly, the potential terms for a permanent funding formula to deal with the issue of dredging. So that's the suggestion I make. So that's moved and seconded. Yeah, the only thing I'll add is it's timely that I'm having a meeting tomorrow with the Metro Vancouver representative on the port board. So this will be a good thing to ask him. Okay, so we've got Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I'd like to be more direct, having sat on the board, but I will go and support the referral. But I think we should, since we're surrounded by the water and the rivers, I think we should come out and say we would be a partner in some way, shape, or form. I guess my question, Your Worship, in supporting them, I'd like to know from staff, what happens to Richmond and how does it hurt the residents as if we don't do this? We want to protect our waterfront and dikes, and that's part and parcel of dredging on the channel and stuff. We talk it's a safety issue. So if we don't do it, what's the backfall, if you wish? I know we want to say where we are, and I think we need to know that too, to be able to put forward a good argument of why we're into it, but we're taking it from a different point of view.
Well, we'll just add that to the referral.
If you could add that to the referral, I think it's extremely important. And the other thing, Your Worship, I'd like to see us, whether we do it or not, is to see how we can help with reducing the permit fees and letting the province and the feds know that we're willing to deal with this as a city, because it does concern us and the future of not only Richmond but Stephenson. I think sometimes, they get all kinds of things from the East Coast to the West Coast. I'm appalled that the Department of Fisheries and Small Craft Harbors haven't come forward. Absolutely shocked, but I'll bet I can tell you where the money is then, and it's gone out east. So anyhow, I think we need to be a bit vociferous on this as well.
So we'll add to the referral the rationale for action.
Good,
I mean, it's perfectly obvious why this is an absolutely critical initiative, but let's get it down in writing and let's have staff deal with that. Harold, Councillor Steves.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that, that staff, with the assistance of the SHA, if they've got records, go back and find the records as to how this began in the first place. 50 years, 60, 70, in the 1950s, there was 30 feet of water in front of all the cannery buildings. Stephenson Channel was the entire channel of the river that went from the Stephenson shore over to Westham Island. There were two Stephenson canneries on the other side of the river at the in the early 1900s, the Harlech and the Albion, and the cannery channel was the whole channel. They, from about 1900 on, the New Westminster Port started putting in training walls in, and sometimes around 1950. There was there were some wing dams put in because training walls upriver had stopped the flow of the water. The water used to curve into Steveston. It was the river was circuitous, and their training walls upriver stopped the water from flowing into Steveston as dramatically, and it started to create a bar. They put two wing dams on the bar to prevent the water from coming in to Steveston to flush the channel out. And then eventually they put a causeway over to the sandbar that built up. And then they put a jetty on top of the sandbar. So the Steveston channel that we know today as Cannery Channel is simply a backwater created by the port to prevent the water from flowing through our channel. And I think if you research that, you find that is the reason that Public Works Canada agreed way back in 1950 when they did this, that they would keep the channel dredged. Then they turned it over to the Coast Guard, and then the Coast Guard went out of the business. But some of you may remember that the dredge was actually tied up for 50 years at the foot of 7th Avenue. Actually, which was city property at the time. And when they stopped dredging the channel for us, the dredge moved away, and we started getting this problem. So that's the first referral I'd like to make to research it, because the federal government undertook to keep our channel dredged when we as a community and the fishing industry agreed to let them to channelize the river to help make the main channel self-scouring. The second point I'd like to make is that at one time there was a full-time dredge in the river, in the channel. It was owned by the Maskell family. It was used to dredge Scotch Pond, to create Scotch Pond in the first place. And if you notice, the Britannia shipyard site and all of the BC Packers land is raised 6 feet up to dike level. In the early days, it was a suction dredge, and they simply dumped the channel dredgings over the dike. And all of the housing developments at BC Packers, everything from number 1 road to number 2 road is on 6 feet of fill from channel dredgings. If we had our own suction dredge, this is class 1 farm soil, it's silt, and it could be used to raise the level of farmland in Richmond. Now that's a long-term project, but we're considering doing that. It would require using the water lot in front of the city lands to the east of the causeway going to Stephenson Island to stockpile it, but it could be used as soil on farmland. Or it could be used to somehow, if we could get it out to Sturgeon Banks, it could be used to build up the sea berms that we're hoping to build there to keep Richmond protected from the storm surges like the one we had last fall. So those are what I'd like to see referred to staff to come up with some of those solutions.
All right, so I'll add those 2 things onto the referral unless anybody objects. One is the history of dredging in Steveston, and secondly, the feasibility of the city of Richmond owning and operating a dredge, a river dredge.
Right.
Okay, we'll go to Councillor Au.
Yes, Worship. While staff is being directed by this referral to final options, however, I like Councillor Manetti, I just want to be more direct. Shall we not find a way to convey to the federal government saying that you are part of this, this is national importance. And I would like staff to find out, what have we done in the past to, remind the federal government of their responsibility, and what are the strategy that we can do together with our partners to just remind them of this thing. I think we have to tell them this is what we wish for. Do they just want to wait for crisis to happen before they would do anything?
I can tell you that having lived through this in the past, there is no question that the city treats this very seriously and think that it's a priority. Right. We gave a cost share a few years ago, along with a number of other partners, and there have been numerous discussions with various people, and all of them are around that topic of this is critically important. This just cannot continue. Yeah. So I think that implicit in this, Councillor, is exactly what you and Councillor McNulty are saying.
Right.
This is important. But to say a specific figure without knowing the cost, without knowing the options, we have to be specific about it, and then we can give a specific commitment.
Okay.
Let's see now, Councillor Hobbs.
Well, thank you, and through you, the chair. I'll support the referral, but implicit is one thing, but I don't mind being more explicit from time to time, and this, I think, is a time where we probably should be, because just in my brief knowledge, not as extensive as Councillor Steves, who made some good points about it, but this is just another example of downloading from the federal government that has taken place over several decades, different governments in place. And I just find it completely unacceptable. So notwithstanding the good efforts of some of our representatives from the province and the federal government in trying to help us achieve some kind of solution, it's just an abandonment of responsibilities that the federal government used to properly address. It is of national importance. It is of provincial importance. And of course, it's of importance to the city of Richmond. But this continual downloading of costs onto local governments is something that we should be very explicit in demanding a stop to, because our budgets are limited. And this is a significant amount of money that we're talking about for a very good cause that we all support. And in the end, I think that our federal government has to reassess not only some of the requirements they're putting on stakeholders to address this issue in terms of how it is done and the amount of time and money, but also in providing a sustainable process, including a budget that allows us to regularly maintain a very important national strategic interest for Canada, the province, and the city. So I support the referral, but I'm explicitly not that happy that this is continually coming up, and it's very much left up to people to respond to in some sort of urgent manner, when really it should be all about what Councillor Steves mentioned, planning, equipment, and a sustainable process to just do it on a regular basis. So I'll support the motion, but downloading has got to stop. Thank you.
Just hang on. Okay. The downloading question, I'm sorry to say, whether it's our responsibility or not, we're in for some money. So we can object to that and try and minimize it, but we got it. Secondly, I take the points been made by the three councillors to my right. If you want, we could add to the motion, like before it gets to referral, that council endorses a sustainable cost-sharing approach to the critical necessity of dredging the Stephenson Cannery Channel.
I would support that.
Okay, that's what you guys, that's what you want. So we'll make that one, and then referring the other to staff to come up with this various information and to spur the matter on, okay? So that, if that's passed, that would, all of it would come to council next week, okay? All right, so I'll take it that that's part of the whole thing.
Could I just ask one further question?
No, just a minute, we got Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. Well, I'm glad that you added that, because my problem is that this is an emergency. I had the opportunity to speak to 2 or 3 fishermen just last week, and it's critical. I mean, if they weren't the talented skippers that they were, we would have a catastrophe on the Fraser River. This simply can't wait. And as we've heard from the report, it takes 2 years to get these permits. So I would like to see the city of Richmond commit to a specific amount. We do have, according to the report, a recent estimate pegged the cost of dredging in the entire channel to be as much as $5 million. And if that's the case, if we could go first, if the city of Richmond could take the lead, as we do with so many other things, and say, we'll commit to 1/4 of this budget on the condition that the Stephenson Harbour Authority, the federal government, and the provincial government also commit to the same amount of money. That'll put the pressure on them to say, well, Richmond's already doing it, I guess we better jump on board. And I just think that if we don't add that element to the motion, it's gonna sit and sit and sit, and we just simply can't wait.
Councillor, I guarantee this is high on the list. I spoke to MP Baines as recently as an hour ago about it. He talked about the various meetings he's had with Metro Vancouver, with the minister, DFO minister, and others. From my point of view, to commit to a specific number without knowing what the whole number is, whether you're talking about dollars or percentage involvement, is getting a little ahead of ourselves. What if there turn out to be 6 partners? Are we still on for a quarter?
I see your point. Can we ask, though, that staff work with Ms. Gusto since they've already got the estimate?
I take it that staff will be right on top of this. They already have been, frankly, in speaking with the Stephenson Harbor Authority and the others. Okay, so we've got we'll go to Councillor Liu, then Councillor McNulty. Councillor Liu?
Through the chair, question to Ms. Gusto. Thank you for coming forward. Now, is there an equity component in terms of protecting Indigenous fishery? Like are the Musqueam and other Indigenous fishers already a part of the Stephenson Harbor Authority, or are they a separate entity that could be coming forward with us?
They are a part of Stephenson Harbor Authority. We actually have someone from Musqueam sitting on our board as well.
Why wouldn't they be one of the partners?
In funding
Yes.
dredging or helping us?
Both. I mean, City of Richmond has an appointee on the board, and, you know, quite rightly, you're asking us to participate. If it's of interest to them, why wouldn't they be part of it?
I know they're a part of helping lobbying for funding. I know they signed a couple letters on our behalf, but in regards to actually funding it, they've never been approached.
Okay, Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my points, Your Worship, just to finish up, is the First Nations need to be involved. Obviously, they fished the rivers for 10,000 years, and obviously, they also have access to funding. But not only that, they're a lobby group, and they can help lobbying Ottawa for funds as well. And I think it is in their interest, and obviously, well, because they help build Richmond as well. I guess my question, Your Worship, this needs to be done, no matter what. And you mentioned, well, what if there's 6 partners? And I guess my question is, what if there are only 2 partners? And my question is, I don't like on the condition that somebody's going to come involved, et cetera. Either we're in or we're out, and we're not going to do anything, and we are going to do something. Obviously, we're going to be here around for a while. So my question to you, Your Worship, is when will we get these reports back? And what is the critical timeline for Ms. Gusto to start applying for that permit? You should have done it for yesterday, I guess, really. And I think we apply for it regardless of the funding, to be quite frank.
Well, we don't apply for it, they apply for it.
No, they do. So I think that, it's just my
Well-
suggestion, can't tell you what to do. But I guess my question to you, Your Worship, when would we expect some of this information back so we can make a concrete decision to?
Okay, let's ask staff.
2 weeks, a month?
What staff can comment on this, whether
know
you're
who's here.
virtual or you're here at the meeting?
Through the chair of the committee, it's Todd here. Ultimately, we have been doing a number of work behind the scenes, similar to Jamie's comments, meeting with other agencies, levels of government. And so, we have done a fair bit of work in the past. Depending on what you bring forward this afternoon as the referral, there's so far quite a bit of moving parts to that. So that would take us, I would say, at least a month to come back to you.
All right, you've heard the comments that timing is critical. Is the Stephenson Harbor Authority in a position to make the application with funding formula to be determined?
No, we need to secure funding before, we need to have all that in place. I need to, there's a whole process when you're doing a dredging project that you need funding for. I need to get soundings, I need people to be engaged to provide proper costs, like what you said about needing to refer to staff to find out actual costs. We need to spend some money before we submit the applications.
All right, so just to remind everybody, the first part of the motion is to endorse finding a sustainable cost-sharing formula, cost-sharing approach to this critical necessity. Secondly, referring it for the information from staff to work with the partners to suggest a cost-sharing arrangement and a permanent funding formula to determine the costs and our share and the source of the funding. to determine the rationale for the action that we are suggesting, which would be closely tied to the next one, which is the history of dredging in Stephenson, and finally, the feasibility of the city owning and operating a dredge permanently. All right, so that's the motion that's on the floor. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Anybody opposed to that? So that is carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on our list is the BC Energy Step Code and GHG requirements, et cetera, for new building. Peter Russell and Company. What would you like to tell us about this?
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair.
All right. So I take it that this is a progression, which we started some time ago, and gradually the requirements are getting higher and higher, basically,
That's correct.
in terms of the energy and the environmental standards for buildings, for all buildings.
Correct. And this report further foreshadows forthcoming GHG requirements as well.
Okay. We'll go to questions. Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, through your worship, to staff. My question is, as this report is beyond just step code and it includes GHG requirements, but I didn't see anything in here about buildings not being hooked up to natural gas. Could you comment if that is at all applicable to this report?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, through the program that we've developed for both small buildings and large buildings, there's a pathway to zero carbon and or low carbon outcomes. And in a sense, the system is more or less biased towards using that choice so that we do achieve our low carbon objectives.
Is there, through your worship, a follow-up question then, is there any way that could be worded in here or included in the kind of future phases so that it can be anticipated that future buildings need to work the plan so that it's electric only and not gas? Like on our page GP 15, it talks about the 2025, 2027 rollout, subject to council approval then. But could we not, is it not applicable again to being worded in this?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the pathway to get to those standards is embedded in the approach that the city has taken. And the city has taken that approach because ultimately the builders, there's a lot of capacity building that's required for them to meet these higher standards. In essence, at the pace of the code we're going through, the step code I should say, there are occasions where your average builder might only have one building in that given year. And, so to shorten or be more aggressive than we are, we're one of the most aggressive in the region on the step code, we might not see the compliance that we want to see. So this stepwise approach from the province and the city, despite the fact that the city's more aggressive, does allow for that build out and that compliance that we do need. And it is consistent with, in fact, it's in advance of provincial code requirements up to as 5 years.
Great, great. I appreciate that. And I guess my final question then is in regards to benchmarking, which has been a term we've been using where we look for buildings in the different classifications, so the residential and the commercial, that they benchmark, and then we hold future buildings up to those standards. Do we have any of any classification type yet that are made the choice to not hook up to natural gas? Do we have anything in the inventory anywhere in Richmond yet?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, are you talking about new construction?
Yes.
Currently, through the chair to Councillor Wolf, there is that possibility. However, we're not seeing that broadly. Certainly in city centre, we're not seeing it because of district energy requirements. And in other building types outside of city centre, we're seeing mainly a move towards heat pumps.
Okay, thank you and your staff for being available and this report. Thanks.
All right, could I have a motion accordingly? Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Then the report is on the citizen representative on the YVR Noise Management Committee for 2021. John Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing further to add, but staff are here to answer any
All right,
questions.
so it's moved and seconded. Councillor Day.
Thank you for the report. On GP 51, you state that the use of the north runway when it approaches capacity limits. Do we have any prediction on when that will be?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, the answer would be no, we don't have a date at this point. I know through YVR and the pandemic that YVR, obviously business dropped significantly. And at this point in time, they're not planning any third runway at this point. And in fact, they've changed their land use plan to allow for additional uses where one of the potential options for the third runway was to be located. So I think we're talking decades, several decades before there's any process to start consideration of the third runway.
Okay, but obviously, I mean, we've all seen the drawings. I mean, it's like, what, 5% use on the north runway? Like, it's almost nothing. And meanwhile, the south runway, which is where everybody lives, it's just constant traffic. So it's got to be getting there, where we can start using the north runway more, at least for takeoffs over the water. So if there's, do you expect any more information to come our way from YVR or transportation federally, or any movement on that?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, we can certainly have that dialogue with the Noise Management Committee. What I would say is that the north runway is being used more and more, especially during the summer months and certainly at busy times. And I would imagine that will continue to be used more and more as we move forward. And the idea is to use both runways to their maximum capacity until there's discussion of the third runway. So like I say, I think we're several decades out, and I can tell you that that north runway will be used much more frequently.
Thank you for your help.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question to staff here, I know it's not mentioned in the report anywhere, but I know all of council received some information from Burkeville residents, mainly in 2020, but I was just curious if there's been any further issues with the residents in regards to the YVR logistics building being built and the noise that's from that. Is there any further comments that staff can share on how that was resolved, if indeed it was?
Councillor, just remember we're in an open meeting, not a closed meeting. And secondly, for staff, you can comment on the noise aspect of that last question, but the rest of it would be outside this meeting.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, there really isn't much of an update at this point. I know that construction is more or less stopped. And to the best of my understanding, there is no tenant that's been announced for that building. So I would say at this point, things have kind of cooled off at this point, but we'll certainly be monitoring it as well.
Great, much appreciated. Thank you.
All right, so the motion has been made. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. That brings us to Councillor Au's motion. Do you want to introduce it, Councillor? We all have the wording of it, I think.
Yes, very good. Well, actually, I submitted the motion early last week. Unfortunately, it was not on the agenda, so that you could not think about it more in advance. But basically, the background was that when we talk about the sustainability report earlier, last month, I asked a question about the recycling of clothing and textiles. And I was told that the approach that we use right now is to encourage donation. However, as I dig deeper into the problem, I realized that that's not the solution, because only a small percentage of the donated clothes are actually being purchased or we use. And most of the textiles and clothing actually went to landfills. So that's why I moved this motion, I propose this motion, and hopefully that staff can come up with some options. Now, I'm not dictating a program. I'm asking staff to develop a program or options that we can consider. The bottom line is that I want to move forward with this recycling of clothing and textiles. So staff can do some research into the matter and come back with options that we can choose from so that we can move ahead with this problem.
Yeah, I'll explain my rationale for this. I think that the idea of the treatment of textiles in our waste stream is quite a viable question to be determined, because textiles do take up a lot in the landfills or the incinerator, and there's a lot of implications. But I'm recommending that we refer this matter to staff to consider, to do some research and tell us our options after various discussions. Maybe I could get a seconder for that? Okay, so that's moved and seconded. Now, as I say, I think it's really something that we need to look at. I've been involved with this question quite a bit because I was chair for a number of years of the Zero Waste Committee of Metro Vancouver. I was also the chair of the National Zero Waste Council for 7 years, and we talked about the recycling and the treatment of textiles. So when I saw Councillor Au's ideas, I contacted Metro Vancouver and I said, what have you been doing? And they basically came back and they said, well, we looked at the question and we came back with an education and awareness project. And I said, well, why didn't you recommend a ban? And I'll just read a bit of their answer. When we did our mock inspection ban, where we pretend textiles are banned and then have our disposal ban inspectors provide us with data as to how many surcharges would be issued if it was banned. So when you have a banned substance, if it's in the garbage truck, they get a surcharge. So we discovered that most of the loads that would be surcharged would be loads that do not have recycling markets at this time. First of all, clothing from thrift stores that doesn't meet the resale market standards, so it has no option but disposal. And secondly, scraps of fabrics, presumably from cut and sew shops that have no markets. As a result, a disposal ban would have penalized businesses that were responsibly disposing of materials with no recycling option. They go on to say, we also did some work with brands in collaboration with a certain lab to try to influence the upstream decisions that impact the ability of clothing to be recycled at the end of life. We found it is a bit of a chicken and egg situation where consumers are buying cheap mixed plastic and other fiber clothing that has no value at the end of its life. We saw some brands that tried to go against this trend and make all the clothes locally, and we saw them go out of business after the lab because consumers were not ready to pay for the high-priced locally made clothes. So all things considered, changing consumer behavior seemed like a good place to start. Now, I'm not saying that that is the final answer. What I am saying is the Metro Vancouver and the National Zero Waste Council have done a lot of work on this, and they can assist us with our research on the various options that we've got. We may come to the conclusion that some sort of a ban would be appropriate, but if so, we would probably be advocating that it be a region-wide ban as opposed to just our city. It may require different processes and approaches with the thrift shops, or it may be more education similar to what we've done with our Gold Star program with our recycling generally, and to find out, learn from that as to how we can better acquaint people with how to responsibly recycle or dispose of their textiles. So that would be the nature of the referral, is to get more information on it. So we have a few questions. Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody, and that was excellent to hear what Metro had to say. I would ask that staff just drive over to Value Village, because if you go over there, they have these large bales, looks like a bale of hay, massive, like 8 feet by 8 feet, and all the clothes that they're not gonna sell gets bound up and strapped, and they obviously send it somewhere, or they wouldn't do that.
A lot of it goes offshore,
Yeah,
like to Southeast Asia, those kinds of places.
so that might be an option then. Yeah, just mentioning it because I've seen it firsthand, and, you know, I realize that a lot of people do throw their clothes out. I would actually be in favor of a ban of throwing clothes in the garbage. I don't think it's the right place to put it. There's other ways to use it.
Councillor Hobbs.
Well, thank you, and through you, the chair, that was a good explanation that you provided, and I support the referral. Because I think one issue is it'll be very difficult for Richmond to develop a program in its own municipality, and you've already outlined why. So I do support looking at it. Textiles are a huge environmental impact. It's not something we think about often, because usually we're thinking of air pollution or oil spills or something like that. But it's just a massive problem. And even the solution that we sometimes have of shipping our textiles or electronic parts in a different category off to other parts of the world, I don't know that that's necessarily the solution we're looking for either. So I support the referral, and I look forward to staff coming back with different issues that might be feasible for Richmond to do, but also for the region. Thank you.
Councillor Wolf.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple points on this. I know I would have put more research together if we had this earlier, but a couple things that I had looked into in regards to this. So right now, there's 3 locations you can take textiles and old clothes in Richmond, beyond the thrift stores or donation bins, but you can take it to the return it depots. But as of the end of this month, June 30th, those 3 locations are no longer accepting any textiles. So the problem is going to be getting even worse in that regard. So I guess a couple or question or two I had. I know items like, so not the mixed synthetic ones, but things like cotton, linen, wool, bamboo, hemp, silk, those items are all biodegradable. Some can be, if they're like pure and simple, they can be degraded within a week. Are we able to look into the green bin program, and if it can handle certain types of textile that maybe we can accept at, say, the city's works yard recycling depot, where maybe we only accept hemp and bamboo or something for start that could be infused into the green bin program. So that was one question. And then
that would be part of the options that staff would be looking at.
Okay, thanks. And then my second one, a lot of our clothes that don't go for resell or reuse go to these sorter graders, which I think are big machines that just grade it, slice the stuff into little bits. I'm not sure if staff can comment. Like, I don't think there is any of those in Richmond, but maybe that could be also part of the referral to look into maybe some unused grading equipment to create a local supply of the broken down materials, as opposed to just still keeping things whole, right? Once they break down or they get cut up, they could get fused into insulation. They could be used in mats, rugs, ways to keep heat in places where we want heat to stay. Like, for example, anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Yeah, I think all that would be part of what staff's going to tell us about. Councillor McNulty.
Thank you, Worship. Just to finish up on this one, and thank you for the dissertation that you gave us. I think it's outstanding. But a ban is not going to solve this, and no matter what we do, Your Worship. And looking for solutions for disposal is very important to us. I think we should stop thinking local, but look global, because this is a global problem as well. And we can do our little bit for what it is. It's like our garbage and some of our stuff is shipped overseas to the Philippines, to various countries, etc., with the boatloads. And I think with climate change and whatever we have to do with it, I guess we've got to look at, if staff could come back, and I haven't got any answers, is the solutions for disposal, or what do you do with this, okay, and not put it in the environment. And if obviously through you to them to come back with what education can we give people? What do I do with this shirt when I can no longer do it anymore and it's not going to be sold at Value Village, or I don't take it to it? I would say probably majority of our stuff is in landfills, and it doesn't go to Value Village. It doesn't go to RAPS. It doesn't go down to Stephenson to be sold in the auxiliary. It goes in the black can, and away it goes. So I guess it's something we've created and it's good, and I'm glad it's brought forward. It's created a problem, and I think we have to try to get as much possible solutions. And Your Worship, you were chair of that for many. What are other countries doing, or has anybody addressed it worldwide? And many of the conferences that you've chaired throughout the world. And if we can get that information, maybe we can come up with some solutions in our community. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to ask staff to comment on that in due course. I can't remember specifically in answer to your question, but I think it was spotty at best as to any countries doing anything about it.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Steves.
Yeah, I just think we should respond to Metro Vancouver. I'm not sure what committee's handling this, whether zero waste or what, but it seems to me on an international basis, as Michael was saying, that there should be a differentiation between fabrics that are natural and fabrics that are basically made out of plastic and chemicals. And when you go to the store, it's very hard to find a cotton shirt, but they are there, but they don't label them properly. And so there's cotton, there's linen, there's hemp, there's wool, there's all kinds of different fabrics that they can be made from. And I think that we should be promoting the use of natural fabrics, because even if you're not recycling them, every time you put your plastic shirt in the wash, fibers are removed from it that end up in the river and the ocean, and the micro plastic that's in the ocean, a lot of it's simply from the clothes that have been washed in the laundry. So I think it's a time to return to natural fabrics as much as possible.
Yeah, on that note, remembering that a lot of the fabrics, you might get a shirt that is 80 or 90% cotton, but there is the polyester in it. So it's not always just one or the other, it's this mixture, and what's the tolerable levels for that mixture?
Exactly.
Councillor Howe.
Yes, I just want to respond to some of the comments. I realize that this is a complex question, and I'm also not in favor of a ban in itself, but perhaps, we need to do something to keep it moving. Sending those old clothes overseas is actually not a solution. Researchers revealed that many of those textiles being shipped overseas end up in landfills, just like the other types of rubbish. So I think somebody has to start the ball rolling, and I think perhaps Richmond is the starting point for doing more in this area. And I think we can also start start by collecting, sorting, and also recycling some type of textiles in the beginning, and then we can go further as we go along. So I have no objection to the referral motion. I just want this to be at the beginning of a process.
Yes, an important question. All right, we'll call the question then. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? That is carried. I'll ask for a motion to adjourn, then we've got Finance Committee. All right, we're now adjourned, and we'll go to Finance Committee, if you give us a second. Okay, we'll call the Finance Committee meeting to order. May I have a motion on the minutes? Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. And you see when the next meeting date is. So the first item of business is the annual report and the annual report highlights. Ivy Wong, I don't know, I see Clay is online. Do you have any comments about this?
Nothing from me, Your Worship, but happy to take questions. Ivy?
Yep, we will take any questions, Your Worship.
Looks to me like another award-winning presentation, but I guess we'll find out. Counselor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. Well, that was a really interesting report. I love the way you set it up with the graphs and the charts. It makes it a lot easier to understand. I was really pleased on FIN 25 that you reported that our cash and investments are now at $1.4 billion. So that's going to go a long ways to build some of the big projects that we're working on. I had a question about the graph, though, on FIN 65. It says Richmond housing starts by type of units 2021. And I know this isn't really a question maybe directed at you, but it shows that 91% of housing starts were apartment. Is there any way to know the breakdown of those in terms of, I mean, I know this is just a financial report, but in your cache of information, rentals, strata, affordable, because 91%, that's a big number. Nothing?
Through your worship, I think that answer may be better addressed by someone in affordable housing.
Yeah.
Your worship, if I may, perhaps I can respond to that, to Councillor Day. We can provide a breakdown of that. We have just recently circulated a memo to council dealing with affordable and rental housing, but we can provide you with a breakdown with either by email or with a subsequent memo.
Thank you very much. I just was surprised by that 91% number. So thank you very much for that information, Mr. Ursik.
All right, may I have a motion? Moved and seconded. Councillor Al?
Yeah, on page FIN 70, I noticed that when you talk about the top 10 corporate taxpayers in Richmond, there's a number company. So do you know what kind of business do they do?
Through your worship to Councillor Au, unfortunately, a lot of properties are owned by numbered companies, and we do not know exactly what type of business they do in the city, because some number companies, they would create a number company just to hold one piece of property. So it could be for rental purposes, it could be for their own business.
Okay. Yeah, but
Maybe
this
you
is
could
big,
take a
this
look
is
at
very
that.
big.
We certainly can.
Yes, see if there's probably a little more information you can get us for that
We can
one.
do a title search on, or a company search on those
Both,
companies,
yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so let's see now. On the annual report, all those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Then we have our financial information for the first quarter. Cindy Gilfillan, anything to add to your report?
Nothing to add.
Interesting. Yeah, so that's moved and seconded. Interesting analysis. We'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Thank you. And then the active capital projects information for the first quarter. Jenny Ho.
Mr. Chairman, we have nothing to add.
There's a recommendation.
Moved and seconded. Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody, and thanks for the report. I just have a couple questions. On FIN 130, we have a list of the contracts over $75,000, and they total $26.6 million. And I was just wondering, especially with the janitorial one, why that isn't being done in-house?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, I think I will refer that to Cindy Griffin on her reports. That is for the financial information first.
Where are you referring to?
It is the, where is it here? It's, it's on the list on FIN 130.
On, and what line?
Sorry, I'm just looking for it. I can go on to another question while I,
Through the chair, I can. It's Jim Young here. I can answer that question.
yeah?
All right, tell us where it is.
Yes. I'm not sure where the actual item is in the report, but I can answer the question of why we're not doing the work in-house. We do. The city does do janitorial work in-house throughout the city. The janitorial service provided in this case is for the RCMP. And within that context, they require staff that have certifications and the clearances to be able to perform that service. The city does not have enough staff to be able to perform that service. So we do have some staff that are qualified to do it. Hence, we do go out to the market to find qualified contractors that do have the necessary clearances to do that janitor work at the RCMP.
Thank you. Yeah, that was item number 32, the janitorial services at Community Safety Building. I reached out to the union to ask them if they knew anything about this, and they said that the janitors are willing to submit an RCMP enhanced security check and that it would be cost effective. So that's just why I'm curious why, it just seems like it's, $360,000. If we could do it in-house, I would think it would be, competitive and it would, better
I'm
for
still
locals.
trying to find where you're referring
Okay,
to.
it's page FIN 131, and it's item number 32, which is the janitorial services, it's second from the bottom, at Community Safety Building, which is the RCMP building. But according to the people I talked to, the staff would be willing to do a RCMP enhanced security check.
Through the chair, yes, if we have staff that were to do that security check, that would be a great option for us to be able to use more city staff for that type of service.
Well, I think it's worth investigating, to see if we can keep it in-house. Any job we can keep in-house, I think, why not? So
I know that the requirements for the RCMP building, the maintenance contracts are very complex, and they require a lot of application, a lot of qualifications, and a lot of security checks.
maybe we could get a memo on that. Then the next question I had was on page 160. It's the Gardens Agricultural Park. And
Just a minute. Which one are you on? Like 131?
yeah, that was
It's
that
on
one.
the motion we've already passed. We're
No,
on to active capital projects.
right. And on page 160, there's the money going towards, I've got it here, the Gardens Agricultural Park. It's on the list of capital projects. And it says on the Gardens Agricultural Park that the northern section, which was previously closed, is now open with plantings and furnishings and completion of a pathway. It's kind of this isn't an agricultural park. We're not farming there, I don't think. And I was just wondering if we should maybe consider changing the designation or the name of it, because are we farming it? Is there any, because I don't think we are. I've been over there and it's just basically like trees and bushes. It's lovely, it's gorgeous. But I'm just wondering why it's designated as an agricultural park when I believe there's no farming there.
I really don't, I think this person in front of us is a financial person.
Yeah, so I was thinking maybe,
I think you should take that to a committee if that's what you want.
okay. And my last question was on page 164. There were 3 vacant positions at the,
That's the next report.
164,
Councillor Wolf.
right, my apologies.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess I just have one question, and it relates to page 144, and that's the area of under equipment. And on the second paragraph on 144 is about vehicle and equipment reserve purchases. So I know when the Sustainable Green Fleet Policy 2020 was approved, gas prices weren't this high, and when we or staff were seeking council approval for the F-150 Lightning, the fully electric trucks, gas prices were not this high. And then I know there's been a lot of delay in getting those vehicles on the road due to chip issues and stuff. So my question is, the last sentence of the second paragraph, it talks about as of Q1 this year, 6 units have been completed, 7 units are on order, 15 units are waiting contract. So my question is, are those 2 electric vehicle trucks, are they included in the 7 units that are still on order and delayed? And then my other part to that question is, are staff seeking funding for more in now, as opposed to waiting to get more on order, because we're finding how long the back order is for electric vehicles, and that'll probably only grow.
The latter question is, this is a report on the status of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now on the first question, is anybody here or virtually that can give us some idea about the substance of this thing about the vehicles? Because I think it probably should go to a committee if you got that question. But does anybody want to go on it? Suzanne?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf. This just provides a status update as Q1 as to where we're at. We have not, in fact, been encountering too many issues with delays in getting our vehicles due to chip shortages because of our purchasing process. I will have to advise on the status of the electric trucks. I'm not expecting a delay on those, but I don't have an ETA with me at the moment, so I can provide that information separately.
Okay, that's all then. Thank you.
Okay, let's call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Q1 for Lulu Island Energy. Peter, anything to add?
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair.
All right, that's moved, and is it seconded? Moved and seconded. Councillor Day.
Question at the wrong time. The Lulu Island on page 164 says that we had 3 vacant positions. Have those been filled?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, we're still working on that. We're nearing completion, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
All right, so we'll call the question on Lulu Island Energy. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. And the Olympic Oval, the first quarter information, is Rick here? Rick, anything to add to your report?
Nothing to add, Your Worship.
They have moved and seconded. Any discussion? Councillor Liu.
Thank you, through the chair. Just noticing that Oval had skating of 553 kids and spring break camps of 446. Do we know what the capacity is for those events?
Take that question. Through the chair to Councillor Luke. So you're asking about the capacity for the skating programs?
The skating and the spring camps, because it says it was well attended, but was it like 80%,
Yeah, I don't have
100%?
the exact numbers on what the capacities are, but those 2 programs in particular, we are experiencing registration levels that have exceeded not only 2021, but also 2019, which was our largest year. In fact, we've achieved our registration status for summer camps already, and it surpassed. We still have another month of registration for that to surpass, and the demand for Learn to Skate has been incredible in 2022, and we've actually already surpassed our targets in 2022 from 2021.
Okay, thanks. Maybe if next time we could just have percentage of like
absolutely
registration capacity, that would kind of just give us some mental benchmarks of how we're doing.
Yeah, if I may add just probably one of our biggest challenge right now is trying to find enough instructors. So that would probably speak to where our capacities are. That's usually the limiting capacity in trying to provide more services.
Thanks.
Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. Thank you for the report. On page FIN 174, which is the last page of the report, it states that the marketing budget for 2022 is $545,000. How many staff does that include?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, that the marketing department has 4 full-time staff.
All right, thank you.
We'll call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried.